Welcome back to the Persian Empire, where things are actually looking, well, not too bad. Of course, we are an empire because we've puppeted our mates up here in Kiva, who are just incredibly loyal to us. We're actually doing all right. I noticed the Russians have started improving relations with us, and we're improving them with them. So maybe we can get a temporary ceasefire with the big Russian bear in the north after some unfortunate events last time around Makran. I'm sure I got absolutely flamed in the comments, and rightly so. Do not rush a war. There is no need. Anyway, moving swiftly along from that, welcome back. This is probably also the last episode that I'll record before reading your comments, so I'm looking forward to reading those. I will read them carefully. Anyway, we're playing as Persia. We're currently ranked 35th in the world, actually a little bit better than I think how we started. But that's not really the main objective here. I do, however, have a few things that I'd like to focus on. First and foremost, we have a free government reform. Trying to weaken these powers was a soft objective for me last time. I'm going to try and prioritize it a little bit more this time. We're going to try and change the government, which probably means we're going to need to change who is actually in power at the moment, our ruler. I'd also like to keep weakening the landowners. They were at 40%. We've got them down to 30%. We're trying to bolster up some opposition to them as well. And I think I'm going to stick to it. Now, the intelligentsia don't love me at the minute, but we'll work on them. We'll also try and pull some power away from the religious group as well. And the way that we're going to do that is through our laws. We need to keep on keeping on. I'd love to get some things like schools or a health system online. And of course, we're going to try and move away eventually from the monarchy as well, I think. I don't quite know the ultimate direction, how we'll necessarily end up, but I do know that I want to get us out of the hands of the landowners and also to a certain extent our religious group as well, and try and transition us towards something, whether it's democratic liberalization or something a little more hardcore. I'm not quite sure yet, but it can't be what it is right now because it's just too restrictive on my laws. A reminder that if I take a look at, I think it's the diplomatic lens, yes, and then declared interests, you can see the kind of Central Asian region that we occupy and where it borders with the others. At the moment, we have our declared interest here still, so we could also look to move that way. But anyway, this is our sort of base declared interest as Persia. This is the greater Persian area that I consider, if you're wondering what I consider to be. And, we've already made some significant headroads. Anywhere else that I declare an interest is kind of extra. We could either look to the Caucasus, which I'm not mad at, or look around here. For the minute, even though we're improving relations with Russia, I'm going to declare an interest on the Caucasus, but of course keep this conflict in my back pocket as well, which, by the way, if you were wondering, Egypt did a fantastic job, and they've actually managed to secure the strangest land border with us. So we've also got the Ottomans that we could look to divide and conquer now that the Egyptians have kind of started that for us. Actually, no, you know what? I'm changing it back. We'll keep the Russians on side for now. I won't do anything to aggravate them too much. Let's maybe eye up some of these central territories. The other thing that really hit me in between sessions was just how short of wood we're going to end up domestically within our economy. So we're either going to need to join another market or rely on trading with another market like the Russians, or try and take some land ourselves. Because if I try and add extra logging camps, we are nearly full. These two territories are Dunskies. These ones have a little bit more to go, granted. If we want to keep constructing, we're going to need to keep improving that, though. That's the trouble. So we might need to also look somewhere with a bit more woodland, rather than literally the desert in turmoil. I don't know. Looking at my budget screen, because we want to improve other groups who aren't in power, I'm going to raise the intelligentsia wages to the top. That'll give us +5 approval on them. We could also look to do the same with our military group. It would add an extra 3 grand. It's probably not that bad. We could balance it out with a handy services tax. Here's one I prepared earlier. Neat. That will at least balance out the government wages. We could return the military group just to a status quo. That way we're not actively losing approval from them now that our economy's looking a little bit better. Opium tax making a lot of money. Services tax making a lot of money. Things are looking okay here on the balance books. I'd like to bring our taxes down a fraction. Some of that actually could be to do with lost income still in our market. How are we losing it? Luxury furniture I don't really care about. Fish. Fish. and also grain and services. But fish at the moment is the really high demand. So let's improve our fishing wharves. We have a little bit of capacity for those still, of course. We've got lots of coastal territories. So let's smash 2 down there, and then maybe 1 in each of these for the peasants, right? These are actually all pretty decent territories for fishing. We could also look to improve that supply chain by adding some food industries. What will these do? These consume grain, produce groceries, right? Can be used by... Okay, so also, actually, that reminds me that we also probably want to bolster our grain industry here too. Either through wheat farms or rye. Wheat and rye, I don't really mind. I mean, in reality, actually, we could go for a lot of these, change some of their production methods, that kind of thing. It looks like there is a slight difference in production, but as I mouse over these, I don't see a change in employment. So it is really just, do we want to produce a few different goods, or do we want to focus in on specific ones? Even in terms of other modifiers, they look to all be basically the same. So there's no real downside here for swapping between. I could get a little bit of extra fruit and sugar out of a rice farm, but otherwise not a biggie. What's interesting is when I look into each of the resources, though, it tells a very different story, right? We can't do rye at all, nor millet, nor maize. We can do rice in this one territory. There's a whole load of capacity for rice up here. Let's get a little bit of that going. Some rice farming up here on the Caspian Sea. I love it. We should probably get like 3, to be fair. And then also, obviously, we're going to have to double down on our wheat farms. Our main territory, still looking pretty decent. Let's get 3 there. 1 there as well, because it's actually going to be have some profit implied from the very beginning, which is relatively rare. So we'll also do another 1 there. That should bolster up our food a little bit. Now, I think I'll turn my attention to the government. We have a couple more goods in short demand. We need some more government administration in our capital territory. The demand for that's just going to keep going, so I'm just going to add more. Our tools workshops are unable to fully hire. Why is that? Wood is down on base price. Could have gone a little overboard on that. Tools, way down on base price. So, we need to up our construction. That is all good. Either that, or we could look to maybe change what's being produced here. This would consume more iron, start producing better tools. We could actually also look to tool up our construction sector as a whole. That would be another way to slightly change the demand here. What would it do? It would, increase the demand for tools. It would decrease the demand, though, for wood and fabric, and significantly increase our iron demands. We should probably move towards this anyway. It does remind me of a couple of things, though, that I'm going to turn my attention to now. They're both on the government screen. I think I'll look at them first. The first one is the laws around slavery. At the moment, this is keeping the landowners in the incredible amount of power, so we need to try and cut that down. It's also, of course, limiting our capacity of our populations. So we need to try and boost up a group who opposes them. That's why I've raised the wages of the intelligentsia as a short-term buff. At the minute, we just cannot move towards anything else here, not even legacy slavery, to slightly weaken them. So that's going to be a big one for me. Let's look to reform the government then. As landowners continue to decline in power, probably not this reform cycle, but maybe I'll have a play around. Maybe next reform cycle, we might be able to start booting them out and replacing them with someone else. And it looks like PB, industrialists and intelligentsia, are starting to rise to the top. Okay, so I have a couple of funky options to play around with. Basically, keeping the landowners in ensures that legitimacy stays at least above half. Removing them is a terrible idea, no matter who gets put in their place. So I keep them in this time, and then I'm left with an interesting decision, where I can lose just a little bit of legitimacy, not too bad, and bring in a friend. Now, depending on the friend that I bring in will depend on the kind of things, of course, that we can pass, and the way that we'll shift the country. At the moment, I'm thinking I'll either put in the industrialists, who would give us a pretty interesting stance on a few different things. Not entirely different to what we're doing at the moment, but fairly decent. The other one that I could look to add if I wanted to be a little more radical, less support behind this one, but I could put the intelligentsia in. It would hurt us a little bit more. It would create a very divided government, is the trouble. However, it would open up some somewhat interesting stances. At the end of the day, having the landowners in will still make it a little bit difficult for us, regardless of who we put in. So I think this time I'm going to add the industrialists because they're nice and loyal to me, put them in, keep legitimacy at 59%, and then next time we might look to do more of a radical shift. For now, though, welcome to government, industrialists. You've done it. You've joined the landowners. Neat. Now, what can we change? We could move more towards a wealth voting system. Interesting. Unlocks rights for women. And we would lose additional strength for aristocrats and capitalists and clergymen and officers. That is really fascinating. If we can push that through, that will help us reform our system quite considerably. Landed voting, a good step to free up extra populations to work. So I like that. We have the option for religious schools. I'll probably stay away from that, although it's not terrible. It doesn't really align well with what I want to do right now. Other options that have opened up are poor laws. This could be useful for us to shift the political dynamics in the country a little bit. It's a little bit of a radical shift, but let's see if we can slam through some wealth voting. Industrialists and intelligentsia will both like it. Landowners won't. It's going to require some help from some events, definitely. It'll lower my authority a little bit, but that's all right. Let's give that a go and see how it shapes up. Bureaucracy, I'm a little bit behind on as well. We'll just need a bit of extra government administration, and we are slowly but surely working on constructing that. My construction sector is, I think, sizable enough that it should be able to keep up with a lot of these demands, but we probably just need now a little bit of time to pass, some work to be done. So I just had an event which opened up some migration potential to Laristan. Laristan could potentially become an additional population center for us. It doesn't have a lot of people. Standard of living is impoverished. Yeah, I mean, it's not a terrible spot. It's probably going to be one of our main port locations as well. So there's also coal potential, fishing. Yeah, okay. Yep. We've also got a discourager on subsistence farming, so maybe I increase a little bit of wheat farming here in future as well. Nice. I think that's pretty good. The only shortages at the minute are taxation capacity, which will eventually be fixed through my buildings, and then artillery is priced a little high, but I also have another small arms industry coming online, and if we just quickly scan through, you can see we've still got a huge amount of subsistence farms. Oh my god. But we're going to get on top of that just by building more stuff like rice and wheat, and it's all good. And then our arms industries at the minute are still producing muskets. We're prioritizing the production of cannons as well. So we should, as these start to build, particularly this extra one that's currently constructing in Tabriz, we should be all right and get on top of that demand for artillery. So I won't bother to do any extra trade. The other thing that I notice we have heaps of is influence. So we can spend that on one-off diplomatic actions or long-running ones. And I feel like it's probably a good idea for us to spend it on some long-running ones. I do have this area under my strategic interest at the moment. And I notice there are a few states here who look fairly vulnerable. We could look to puppet rather than take them over. What about these guys? You know, like, as I look through, I kind of think, I don't know, I mean, do we really need this territory to be part of what we're doing? Yes, of course, because we want to expand our borders, but there could be other ways to move that are more beneficial. At the very least, here's romanticism unlocked. Been waiting for that for a long time. I'm going to find some people to improve relationships with, if I'm not already improving them, like we are with the Chinese. And we'll continue to grow up our wonderful little Persian empire. Boom. All right. Artillery looking good. I've fixed that in the economy a little bit. My taxation capacity is still slightly lousy, but in 12 weeks' time, we're on top of that. My construction is humming, which is great. We've sort of stuttering a little bit on trying to pass wealth voting. Here's another event. What's this? Prominent members of the intelligentsia. Nice. Outspoken supporters of wealth voting. They love it. And close allies of this politician, part of their group, naturally, have been exposed in a corruption scandal. Oh, goodness sake. Oh, that is really unfortunate. So basically, we can just lose all chances of getting this law passed and a bit of bureaucracy, or lose most chances of getting it passed. With the bureaucracy or popularity. I think we'll just let that guy take the popularity hit. Unfortunately, that's kind of going to be it for wealth voting for now. So we'll abandon that hope. No! A corruption scandal! Foiled by a freaking corruption scandal. Really unfortunate. Migration controls was wanted by the rural folk. However, it wasn't wanted by the industrialists or the trade unionists, who are marginalized, so we don't really care. This would help to boost up our support with the PBs and the rural folk if we wanted to shift that way. I don't really think we do, and so unfortunately, we are a little bit hand-tied by this government. We could move away from our interventionist economy and towards this one. This one is potentially a bit better, actually, for us. In some ways, not others. It would really boost the pool for capitalists. Important to note, these guys, their profits, huge. Otherwise, it doesn't really have a massive impact. It would push the landowners over the edge, so it's probably best to stay away from it. You know what? We might as well get some education. Let's have a go at pushing through some religious schools. Take us away from no schools. At the very least, it'll unlock the institution for us and give a little bit of extra education access. And then down the line, we can look to try and shift them to private or even public schools. Okay, I've just gone through and maxed out our barracks as well. This will help us increase our power projection. Likewise, naval bases. We don't actually have any of these at the minute, like none whatsoever, so I could never even do a naval invasion if I wanted to. Really, building a couple, you could argue, isn't also that useful. But I think if we maybe build up one territory with naval bases, right, I'll put 5 there, that gives us at least the start of something. And here... oh, geez. Okay. The trade unionists, who are completely marginalized, have stood up in support of a visiting abolitionist. This is neat because it kind of aligns with one of my overarching goals, to get more people into higher earning work. If I take the path of liberty here, we get plus 20% of slave pots becoming more radical. Trade unionists will get a little bit of approval and attraction. And crucially, the landowners will get a debuff. You know what? I reckon this is worthwhile. And I'm going to do this just because it hurts those landowners, and that is great for us. We're going to have a look at the state of Isfahan a little bit. So let's just check in on the radicalism there. Do I know which one it is off the top of my head? The answer is no. Okay, it's the central one. Right, what do we got? So it's losing population a little bit. Migration, people are migrating out of here. Information-wise, we're not relying on it for an awful lot. Population, yeah, I mean, honestly, it's probably not a big deal. I think that's totally fine. Radicalism is on the rise slightly, but because we're keeping most groups happy, it's actually not too bad. So that is a real win for us. Here we have another one straight off the bat where we can lose popularity of this religious schools, which is slowly eeping up, or we can throw the armed forces to the wayside and get a better chance to pass religious schools. And I think we'll do just that. Thank you kindly. I'm going to ruin my relationship with the Ottomans a little bit because this looks like it could be a nice grab out this way for us if we don't want to move this way next. And... actually, everything is looking pretty damn decent right now. There is war going on around the world. Looks like the Prussians and the Austrians are going at it. I can't get a look in at the front lines because I don't have a strategic interest, but we can see devastation running absolutely rampant across a few of their territories. Bit of a yikes. There was also a little bit of conflict going on down here. Yep. Yep. These territories were struggling a bit. I can't help but also zoom in here and notice that this Omani coastline, these trucial states, this could actually be a reasonable take for us. Likewise, Bahrain. I mean, I know it's tiny, but we could puppet them. Get a little bit of extra resource and economy out of them. They're in absolute turmoil at the minute. Goodness gracious me. But look across our states, we're actually doing fine in terms of infrastructure and tax capacity. It is maybe just the slave trade that's hurting us a fraction. East India Company would like to enter a defensive pact with us. Huh. major power ranked 7th. Diplomatically wise, of course, they're a dominion of the Brits, so that would help us buddy up with them. They're not stoked with our mates, potentially, though. We would be joining on the opposite side of some of our friends. I think for the time being, we'll ignore that, but we'll keep it in the back of our mind that these guys are, yeah, actually potentially a reasonable friend for us to have. You know what? I'm going to accept it. We're entering a new era of international diplomacy as we continue to improve our relationships with Queen herself, Her Majesty's government in Great Britain, and actually slowly kind of shift ourselves more towards what they're about. I like it. I like it. Market access in our northern territory is getting a little bit crappy. So we're going to need to try and improve that, particularly as we look to expand it out a bit. Also, there's no government administration here, which is a little bit of an oversight. I mean, it's not ideal anyway, so maybe we could get a little bit of that cranking on. Logistics-wise, obviously we can't get railway. Maybe a little bit of construction sector here. Actually, we are doing quite a bit of constructing along this coastline, particularly as it's one of our main places for getting some of our food stores, right? Rice farms. Hello. Logging camps. Yes. So let's improve the construction industry here a little bit more as well. Artillery is still a problem on the old Persian market, so let's get a couple of additional arms factories. In fact, let's get 3, because I did just build a whole load of extra barracks. So we're probably going to need quite a lot of extra arms production, actually. It's putting a little bit of a strain on our economy at the minute. Expensive government goods, fabric. Yeah, I mean, the market price for them has been trending incredibly low for a very long time. I just cancelled a trade route to see what that would do for us, and it looks like we're doing okay, but not quite perfect. So I'm going to also increase maybe livestock ranches in profitable territories, get 4 of those, and also maybe some cotton plantations, because we're really good at those. So let's expand those in our main area. That should bring that price down as contention around religious schools and police brutality starts to kick off. Good God. Here we could get a plus 10%. And have a little bit of radicalism. We could just get 2% of Armenian pops becoming more radical, or we could lose the chances of getting religious schools but gain some Armenian loyalists. I think in this case we'll try and push through the religious schools. And then on the police brutality front, a little bit of a yikes. We could force that behavior down, lose a little bit of our law enforcement capacity, but get support with a couple of great groups, or alternatively boost PB in the armed forces. Either way, actually, this is a win for the minor interest groups. What we could do is quickly check on the politics screen, right? Keep this open here. Have a look at the different groups and see who we're actually winning and losing with. It's the intelligentsia and the armed forces. Unfortunately, they're not in the same one. Let's go with boosting the intelligentsia up. One day, they will like us. One day. As we start to change laws, landowners now down to 26%. I like to see that a lot. That's great. Yeah, okay. We will work on you. If we can change our leader from being a reckless bandit, that would do something as well. Otherwise, we're looking at changing some difficult laws. Having a look at our society tech screen, which I often ignore, there are a few things that could be quite useful. Construction sector max level, not so much. However, infrastructure from population, maximum infrastructure from population, kind of nice with modern sewage. Also, a couple of other like cheap and easy wins. You know, we've got the likes of banking here that we can just print a little bit of extra money. Can't really fault that. Also, I think we have some interesting unlocks under things like egalitarianism as well as nationalism. Some interesting laws and that kind of thing buried in here. So I might focus on this one for a little bit. At the moment, though, we're struggling away with modern sewage. Now, we can try and lift up at the base literacy of our people. We're working on introducing some schools to try and help out with this, so we'll be able to increase our speed that way. Oh, a new political party has been formed. Society for Progress. Kind of sounds like a name that a bot would call a political party. Like it sort of makes sense, but it doesn't quite make sense, if you know what I mean. Either way, there's an election coming up, and the Society for Progress Party is going really well. 100% of the votes. This I like. This could be a good way for us to try and shift the very nature of our society. Our economy is under a little bit of pressure, but it's not doing too bad. If I can fix these inefficiencies, we'll be all right. Man of wars are going to be our first big one. We're going to need shipyards to be able to build those. So we need more shipyards. I can't build them in the Caspian Sea for obvious reasons. Let's get 2 more of those online. I should also probably check in on them. Don't forget, this is a top tip in the middle of a Let's Play. We should also check in on different construction methods because we'll start to be able to automatically upgrade these. We could select automatic expansion on a few different things here as well. Our wheat farms, maybe, right? We could shift to soil enrichment. This will put additional pressure that I'm not quite ready for, but it would really help the efficiencies of our farms. We have to be careful, of course, when we change these, that we don't ruin things too much. So I might go soil enrichment on rice farms to begin with because there's only 4 of them. And that way, the increased demand that that's putting on fertilizer hopefully won't completely break the bank. So we can do little adjustments like that. Likewise with our ports, naval bases, shipyards with a big one. Construction methods at the moment we're on wooden ships. I guess that's okay. We could shift to military shipbuilding and away from civilian. Probably a good idea for these shipyards. They'll definitely want to be able to do that so that we can actually start producing the clippers that we're short of. Next thing. Hey-oh! We have religious schools, which I know it's like religious schools, not quite what we were going for, but a good thing to have schools nonetheless. We can move towards later goals down the line. That's brilliant. First thing I'm going to fix before we check the schools, though, chemical plants. Do we have any? We're not especially good at those. Let me build 2 of them, or at least queue up a couple for production. At the moment, though, we're probably going to just need to bring some fertilizer into the market because the price is just going to surge. Fortunately, we have some reasonable people we could trade with. We can get a level 2 trade route with the Egyptians, or we could go out to the British market. The Egyptians are land border with us, level 2. Let's do that. We'll get some Egyptian fertilizer up in here. That should hopefully fix that. We could also, for the time being, look to import some of these into our market while we wait. Oman! They actually may have some reasonable infrastructure here. I wonder what vassalizing them looks like. The Trucial states will side with them, and then we could aggravate other people, including the Ottomans, which would be a little bit frustrating. We, of course, don't have any major allies, but if we can get the Egyptians on side, I mean, they don't hate us. We're genial. The Brits as well, I think, are doing all right with us. Yep, genial, yeah. So maybe we could push for a play down there on that one. Maybe. We'll see how we go. What I will do is weaken the landowners again. We'll move away from rebellion conspiracies and just weaken the landowners, raise up the trade unionists, who could actually become a threat on our political system at some point soon. Speaking of which, last thing that I wanted to do, before I forgot, was take a look back in here. We've got the religious schools. Neat. That's unlocked the institution. I could level it up. That would improve education access. It would also improve the religious group's political strength, though, and conversion to their religion. I think for the moment, I'll just leave it on level 1. Plus 10% education access is fine. A trade-off I think I'm willing to make. I'm going to up wages for the armed forces. I think it's worthwhile. Oh, and just as I say that, the election results are in. Neat. The first election we've had. I love it. Oh, that's so good. Okay, now the real key thing here is we'll be able to, of course, reform the government, and it's the Society for Progress Party that is currently at the top. Okay, let's give this bad boy a reform. If we kick out the landowners, it's going to hurt this order so bad. We have 2 other interest groups that want to join the Society for Progress. The Intelligentsia is one, which is great, and the Armed Forces, interestingly, is the other one. So we could put these guys in power and introduce a radical societal shift. We would lose 13% legitimacy, which is awkward. Man alive, this would be a great change for our laws, though. Like, holy cow, we would be able to push through so many extra things. Putting the religious group in as well doesn't do anything, and as you can see, adding other smaller groups tends to just take away from the legitimacy. But if we put these three in together because they want to be part of the same party, oh, it's going to hurt our legitimacy, but we're kicking the landowners out, and my goodness, I am stoked. Let's do this. An industrialist-led Society for Progress Party. Great. Hey, everybody, check this out. Now that we've reformed the government, completely changed it, we still have a landowner, however, at the top of our political structure, at the very top of our government, but we have some spicy things we could change. We have a 17% chance to move completely away from this monarchy and get more of a parliamentary or presidential republic. Massive for us in terms of change. The other thing, though, that is also kind of interesting and maybe somewhat overlooked are some of the societal laws. Slave trade, we could start to shift away from this. This would weaken the landowners. But another one that we actually have a higher chance of weakening the landowners in could be something like bureaucracy. I know it sounds boring, but at the moment with the hereditary bureaucrats, the landowners are getting extra strength. We could flip that over and either give it to the PB with elected ones, or, critically, the intelligentsia. Let's give it to them. Let's try and pass appointed bureaucrats. We have a government in power who somewhat support it, except for the industrialists, and the landowners hate it, but we don't care. This will increase our taxation capacity up 25%, so I don't have to build quite as many of those buildings, and also the intelligentsia will gain some strength. We also just figured out how to print more money at the bank, which is nice to see, because we are burning through a little bit of our reserves at the moment, which suggests to me that there are some issues. First and foremost, this central state is currently in turmoil. Yikes. We could issue a crackdown on that to temporarily smash it. Alternatively, we could look to try and fix some of its other issues. Infrastructure is one, for example, that we could look to get on top of. Turmoil, what is it? Tax waste, migration attraction, and we're reducing it a little bit with our law enforcement. So we could also just up our law enforcement institution again, and that would reduce this across the board. Alternatively, if I right-click on it, I could go violent suppression. This would reduce the penalties from turmoil, but not actually reduce the turmoil itself. I'm going to violently suppress that, I think. It's a bit of a yikes. I know. It's a bit of a yikes, but you know what? We'll do it. We hit Spear Authority, so who cares? We could also, jeepers, increase our law enforcement up to level 4. Woof. Let's increase it up to level 3 again. It was reduced, I think, by an event. But if we crank that up, we temporarily smash down the people here, and we should be okay. I'm still doing road maintenance up here. I might cancel that just to free up a little bit of my authority again. And then we could look to this area to do another something. This time, though, we could look to try and improve people's lives. However, as I scroll through here, I have another idea. Why don't we go to our capital territory and maybe do something like either social mobility to help educate people, that will improve the intelligentsia, or we could improve manufacturing here as well. Greener grass could just bring a whole load of people into it too. I think for the time being, I'll go improve education, access, and qualifications, and or greener grasses, and just try and bring a whole load of smart people here. I like that. We're also going to build a late-game bougie building, although opium plantations, hello. Oh, market access is bad up here, though. That is not what I like to see. We need to get on top of that right away. It is the infrastructure that is really seriously hurting us here. Okay, a little bit of a change of pace, I think. Apart from the logging camps, which we have to construct, I'm going to stop constructing anything extra in this territory, and I'm also going to cancel that greener grasses campaign that I'd initiated. This territory's fine, but without access to ports, and we don't yet have railroads, the infrastructure is really difficult to improve. So I think instead we might look to our more coastal territories to try and improve them, bolster up the population living over here, which is still, you know, as you can see, pretty low. Some of these areas are more populated than others, but generally speaking, it's not great. So we'll shift our production and focus over here where we can actually build things like ports, for example, and just try and lift up the quality of life and the number of people living here too, I think. Okay, final idea. Temporarily, I think we will have to reenact the road maintenance decree up here and also actually increase road maintenance across the board in all 3 of these territories, because market access, even in this one actually, is just not great. So I can use the road maintenance decree to kind of temporarily add some extra market access. We don't need to import the Russian artillery anymore, which is a nice win. And now we have at least temporarily boosted up using our authority, the market access to keep these places at least somewhat functioning. Okay, I've had a look around all of the different groups here. And it's quite interesting because when you look at the diplomatic lens and you look at these countries, you can see where their allegiances lie, right? So Afghanistan is actually our ally, which is great. They also have a defensive pact with Kalat. So there's like a three-way defensive pact here. Makran, the only one who's not in it, of course, has a defensive pact with Russia. Now, these aren't big problems, but they do exist. However, Oman down here, a little bit different. Oman, unlike the rest, doesn't have any friends, right? They're only improving relations with people, and honestly, not a biggie. The Trucial states are under British protectorate at the minute. Bahrain is not doing very well GDP-wise in general. And then these areas we could consider down the line, but I think Oman, especially because they control this territory here, which is kind of an important part of this strait. I kind of do want to control this. I think Oman is probably the best target. And that may be true, but you'll have to wait until next time. Sorry, to see who we actually go for. We'll also restore strength to our economy, bolster our war efforts, and maybe help the Society for Progress. See you then.